So if this story's corny, I don't care because it's my life and it's my story. So bite me. I'm not going to go into the life and crimes of a 14-year-old terrorist, J.P. Ward, but I ended up in the system when I was 14. Juvenile hall, hospitals, group homes, foster care, the whole bit. And in Connecticut, central Connecticut specifically, Hartford specifically, the neighborhood known as Frog Hollow, even more specifically, is a large Hispanic Puerto Rican community. Like literally, juvenile halls in the middle of Frog Hollow, which is like in the mid '90s, it was kind of a rough place, and especially if you weren't Puerto Rican. And I was in juvenile hall, and it was me and about 50 other kids who were all, you guessed it, Puerto Rican. And long story short, the whole 2 or 3 years that I was in the system, they ran the place. They had carte blanche. They were they just, I was on their turf, if you will. And they didn't have to. They shouldn't have. But the boys that I was in the system with left me alone, and dare I say, were friendly, and even more so, I became friends with a lot of them, Puerto Rican boys, who later on in life I would still be friends with, 20s, 30s, and they didn't have to. And you either know what that means or you don't. I mean, I was in prison basically for a 14-year-old, 15-year-old boy, and I was in with the main public area with Puerto Rican gang members and psychopaths. Not that I wasn't ridiculous myself, but it was, they left me alone, and they were nice to me. And there's not one story that I can tell where somebody, was inappropriate or vicious or not to me, but they were to other people, and for whatever reason, they weren't to me. And I wasn't looking for a fight or anything, and I'm not talking anything like that. It just, I always had a soft spot for the Puerto Rican community, specifically after my time in the system as a teenager after that. And when I became dating age, over the age of 18, and, would go to nightclubs and stuff in Hartford and New Haven and down in New York, I always liked going to Latin nights and talking to the Puerto Rican guys, and dated a couple. And it just went back to that, where like they had a side to them that I saw them with other people. They just weren't that way with me. And they've always been great friends. I have a really good friend, if not one of my best friends, who's Puerto Rican. And he comes over, has coffee once a week, brings his dogs. I've talked about it before. I lived in, and still do, live in predominantly Puerto Rican neighborhoods since I'm 20. The women always feed me, and the men always offer me a beer and a joint, and, just how it's always been. And I'm afraid to move to another part of the country that doesn't have a high population of specifically Puerto Ricans. If it's, say, like they're more from Honduras or they're more from Mexico or they're more, and I don't get along with that specific racial group, that I'm pretty comfortable with what I have now. This is just one example. I'm kind of just being ridiculous, but yeah, just the Puerto Rican community has always been nice to me, and I've always liked them, and they get a bad rap. You know, when I was 15 in 1995, 1996, I heard Daddy Yankee for the first time, and you either had to be in prison or you had to live full on in a severe, hardcore Puerto Rican neighborhood to hear Daddy Yankee in the 90s. Because he was doing stuff specifically in San Juan. And they would get tapes flown up here into different Bronx and South Bronx and, you know, parts of Massachusetts and New Jersey. And, you know, he wasn't famous yet. He would be in the 2000s, but you kind of had to know somebody if you knew who Daddy Yankee was in 1996 because he was just starting out. But he was, you know, awesome. And that just, I don't know what I'm talking about. Fuck it. I like the Puerto Rican community. I always have. They were nice to me when I was in prison as a kid, and that's the end of it.